A health alert has recently been raised by the CDC, and they're saying Americans need to get jabbed. And it's not just for C19, okay? They're talking about influenza as well as RSV. Besides these, there's also talk about a never-ending illness, one that some say started since the dawn of the pandemic. It's either coughs, colds, or a mixture of both. One thing that you have to remember is that we were warned about this by none other than the World Economic Forum, with them saying that the vaccines were important even for kids. They said this 2 years prior to the health crisis. Should we be worried? Well, it depends on how you perceive the message from both the WHO and the CDC, especially since they announced a new variant of COVID.
It may feel as though you and your family are stuck in a cycle of never-ending illness this time of the year. Those colds come and they're a little bit more severe than usual, or you have one of those coughs that seems to linger a lot longer than it should, which can be concerning. Well, Dr. Justin Skrinsky joins us now in studio to explain why that cold may not be going away and also some of the things that you can start to do now to feel better. Thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So I know a lot of people seem to get sick around this time of the year. That is a common thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is we're entering our peak respiratory season right now. So it's kind of the common players. You think about the three big ones you hear about: COVID, influenza, RSV. Those are the big ones. But there's sort of a whole host of respiratory viruses that are in the background as well.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of factors that contribute to some of that, especially with it being the holiday season as well. A lot of people gathering. What are some of the reasons that we see such an uptick?
Yeah, for exactly the reason you said. So cold weather forces us indoors, closer proximity. That's really the main thing. So the main way that these things are transmitted person to person. So coughs, sneezes, even just talking, things of that nature.
I want to ask before we even continue, do any of you have a cold right now? How about a cough? You want to know something weird? Experts, actual doctors are saying that these viruses haven't changed. The problem is that our bodies and the fact that our bodies have forgotten how to fight off different diseases. Can you believe that? Our bodies forgot how to fight off diseases? I wonder how that happened. This is a reason as to why many of us, or at least some of us, may feel as if these viruses are much more intense compared to what we were used to years ago. They also cite that us using masks less and mingling more cause us to face a multitude of illnesses yet again. But wait guys, does that mean that we need to go back to the norm in order to avoid being sick forever? Tell you what, if it feels like we should go back to mandates, lockdowns, vaccine passports, comment a number 1. And if you think we should instead focus on strengthening our immune system as well as our bodies, comment number 2. And while you guys think about that, make sure to drop a like for the video. It's very important that we spread out this message to everyone that we know, and also consider subscribing to the channel. That way you don't miss out on any of these important updates. Appreciate that, guys.
Or after the hour, COVID cases are on the rise across the country, and as some states consider mask mandates once again, Governor Greg Abbott insists there will not be any mask mandates here in Texas. As KENS 5 reporter Megan Reyna explains, there is a new law on the books to back that up.
I'm definitely seeing more cases in the last couple of weeks.
The numbers are there to prove it. COVID-19 cases are on the rise. According to Metro Health, around this time last month, Bexar County was recording around 700 cases. This past week, there's been nearly 2,000 cases. And in the small town of Runge, its school district was forced to close last week because too many staff members, including the superintendent, got sick. But Dr. Richard Neal from Castroville says there's no reason to panic.
It really doesn't bear any resemblance to the COVID we were seeing 2 years ago. The classic cases are fever, body aches, congestion, and just flu-like symptoms.
Even if local governments want to reinforce COVID mandates starting September 1st, they can't. In June, Governor Greg Abbott signed Senate Bill 29. It prohibits local governments from requiring COVID-related masks, vaccines, or business shutdowns. But it does not restrict private entities from enforcing their own rules. Dr. Neal says when it comes to masking, he mainly recommends it for his high-risk patients.
Certainly for high-risk individuals that are really immunocompromised, it's not a bad preventive step to take.
Dr. Neal says ultimately it's up to each person on what steps they're willing to take to stop the spread of COVID. However, he doesn't anticipate widespread masking.
I haven't admitted anybody with COVID in 2 years.
Now let's talk about this new C19 variant, the JN1. Kind of sounds like a new Nike shoe or something like that, doesn't it? All kidding aside though, should we be worried about it? A lot of people who's actually gotten it are saying no. But what has me just a little bit worried is that steps are being taken to kind of bring back a few of the mandates that you and I know very well.
There's new information about the fastest growing COVID-19 variant circulating in the U.S. The CDC says the JN.1 variant now accounts for 21% of new cases reported last week. That's almost triple the 8% reported over Thanksgiving. The CDC says this variant exhibits increased immunity evasion compared with earlier SARS-CoV-2 strains. The Omicron subvariant HV.1 is still the dominant strain and has been steadily circulating since early September. Together, these two strains are responsible for more than half of the COVID cases currently in the U.S. Meantime, the Illinois Department of Health has issued an alert to hospitals, long-term health care facilities, and local health departments to minimize the spread of respiratory viruses like COVID. The health department says the facilities should take mitigation measures, including the use of masking and screening, especially in areas where more vulnerable patients are treated.
Does that sound familiar? You have to believe that this is going to put a little bit of strain on Americans this holiday season. The same way it's probably going to be a very hot topic for the CDC and the WHO as we enter into 2024. In fact, the CDC released an HAN, or Health Alert Network, health advisory to tell healthcare providers that vaccination rates against different illnesses that include influenza, C19, and RSV are worryingly low. This is a red flag for them. Why? Because they're telling us that this variant is actually better at avoiding our immune system. This is compared to other variants, but it's concerning to see that it is one that's spreading at a much faster pace compared to any other C19 variant, and two, it's sneakier and can get past our body's immune defenses. You may think, well, Ron, are they now going to ask us to stay at home or force mandates onto us? The good news here is I don't believe that's the case. We're now at a point where the virus has probably infected almost all of us at this point, meaning that despite this new variant, our bodies will try and fight it off. When it comes to mandates, though, I think that we're also kind of past that phase where a majority of Americans would say yes to mandates, meaning that backlash, if one is implemented, would be on a totally different level. Now, this is not to say that an attempt won't be made. I know that none of us were born yesterday, so we're just not that naive, especially since the WHO Accord will continue to be talked about in 2024. And for anybody who remembers, it's basically an agreement between world governments and the World Health Organization to kind of work together if and when a new pandemic arrives, with the term pandemic being defined very, very loosely. But don't get me wrong, guys, I am in no way downplaying any illness that people may get this holiday season, nor am I telling you what you should do or what you shouldn't do with your body. All I'm doing is informing you guys about what's happening, how all of this could possibly play out in 2024, and how you should expect even more of these warnings and red flags, maybe even false flags, being raised as we get closer and closer to the new year. How you face it is completely up to you. But I just want to ask, are you worried at all about this new variant? Or is this just something that we should just kind of brush off as just another cold? Make sure you guys let me know what you think down below. Before you go, I want to thank you guys for hanging out. Thanks for liking the video. Thank you for subscribing, and I'll see you on the next one.